We're back with the second part of our double header tonight. I like these double headers, a little difficult to do, but this one in particular is going to be fantastic because we have back one of my all-time favorite guests, What Big Eyes You Have, who of course is Martha. Martha, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jason. How are you doing this evening?
I'm very well. You know, Martha, there's a lot of people who fancy themselves clever out there who like to criticize me for utilizing confidential sources such as yourself, because I, disparage people for making anonymous complaints against the YouTube videos. But I just want to clarify for people that anonymous people do not publish their blogs on Facebook as you have. And of course, we all know that you can follow Martha and her very interesting posts on Facebook. She's What Big Eyes You Have. She's available right here. And I've always known Martha's identity. So there's a big difference between being an anonymous coward with a fake name and a fake account who never comes forward and just pushes out anonymous complaints because you want to stop the truth from coming out, versus being like Martha and having a code name for fun. And initially, of course, you wanted to protect yourself. There's a lot of people harassing on the internet and all that. And of course, there's people who like to threaten people on the internet when they presume that they might not be held accountable for those threats. And we're talking about my non-friend, Mr. Douglas Gabriel, who, if people haven't seen this video of a phone call between Douglas and myself, it's on the original Crowdsource the Truth channel. Of course, right now you're watching Crowdsource the Truth 2 or Periscope or Facebook Live, but the original Crowdsource the Truth channel is still available, and people can go listen to this ridiculous individual threaten me, threaten to destroy me, and talk about a bunch of weird stuff. Martha, you've really enlightened me as to some of the odd proclivities of this individual who he is a spiritualist of some kind, and he was the principal of a school, and he claims to be a former NSA something. What can you tell us about this guy, Martha? You've prepared a whole report for us today.
Yes, well, when I heard the conversation of when he was threatening you, it was like, oh my gosh, I have to check into this to see who this guy is. And so I started doing some research like I usually do. Everything that I put out there, I find on the internet. Anybody can do it. I mean, it's not like I'm some great sleuth or anything, but I wanted to see, what I could find on him, and I found this website, and anybody can go there. It's called ourspirit.com. And so this is where I want to begin to say, this is what he says about himself. Okay, he says he's a PhD, a retired superintendent of schools, a professor of education. He's authored 11 books. He has taught and written training manuals for philosophical, spiritual works on the nature of the divine feminine. As a Waldorf class teacher and administrator of the Detroit Waldorf schools, he taught courses at Mercy College, at the University of Detroit, and Wayne State University for decades. He became a headmaster at the Waldorf School, Hawaii, and taught at the University of Hawaii in Hilo. He was a teacher in development of charter schools in Michigan, and helped found the first Waldorf school in Detroit public school system.
Now, Martha, can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
Because we've heard a lot about activity around Hawaii. Certainly Edward Snowden was a contractor to the CIA or the NSA in Hawaii. somebody else, obviously Barack Obama spent some time in Hawaii. What's going on in Hawaii? Do we know?
No, I don't, but I know it's all mixed up in this. But um, excuse me, I'm a little hoarse. Uh, but this all gets into more things here. This is like I've I've never seen a resume on someone that's just so impressive.
What, not
I
even
mean,
Robert David Steele?
no, he's better than that.
Wow, amazing.
Yes. And so, listen to this. He received his first degree in religious formation at the same time as an associate's degree in computer science in 1972.
Hmm.
And then he went on to, he was drafted in the Army and served in the Army Security Agency, which he says was the NSA, which I think in the early days that's what it was.
Hmm.
And he was a cryptologist there and a systems analyst. He earned a degree in signal broadcasting. After the military, he entered the Catholic Church as a Trappist monk. Now, that one kind of threw me, so I had to go look that up.
Don't they
A
make beer?
Trappist monk. No, that a Trappist monk is like one of the sects of monks where they I think they take a vow of silence and of poverty.
Hmm. It's
And
too bad he abandoned that
evidently,
vow of silence, huh?
well, that's what I was thinking. That didn't work out well for him at all. So then later on, he went into being a Jesuit priest, where he earned his PhD in philosophy and comparative religion and a Doctor of Divinity.
Hmm.
And this, when he became a Jesuit priest, was when he came to Detroit and started this program for a Bachelor of Arts degree in anthroposophical studies. And this all gets into several religious, I call them cultish like things, the I can't even pronounce it.
Yeah.
Anthroposophical studies was originated by this man called Steiner.
Hmm.
And that was way back in the 1800s. And so Rudolf Steiner was also like into the Rosicrucians and Satanism and all this stuff. So it's really interesting how all these things just kind of mingle together. It's like they took a basket and they said, okay, let's take all these religions. Let's take Satanism.
Right.
Let's take the Steiner stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take like L. Ron Hubbard and, let's take Aleister Crowley stuff. Let's all throw it in this basket. And on the basket, they wrote a name. They wrote the name Sophia.
Let's talk about that for a second, because of course, Quinn Michaels has been talking about how he finds documents on the dark net that sound similar to what you're describing, the convolution of a variety of different religions. And he's mentioned some of the people that you just mentioned, L. Ron Hubbard, Aleister Crowley. I remember specifically that Quinn was speaking with me about, I forget the scientist's name, but he was a guy at JPL who was hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard, and they were into wife swapping and Luciferianism and all kinds of sort of pretty out there stuff. Is this all related, you think?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And what they're doing, though, it's like this all Rudolf Steiner's thing all led to education of children, because that's how you get the next crop, okay? Mm-hmm. You got to get them when they're young and adjust their minds, okay?
Indoctrination.
And these Waldorf schools that's their vehicle. There's over 800 schools, Waldorf schools in the United States, not only in the private sector as those, what do you call it, grant schools,
The charter
but
schools?
the charter schools, but also there's some in the public school system.
So how does that happen? I mean, how do they get into the public schools? I went to public school and it was just, they just sort of, nothing to do with religion there.
Well, this isn't really, they don't come out and call it religion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they they teach these children this philosophy of, they have things like faceless dolls and pine cones for toys of choice, and so the kids aren't really taught to read proficiently until they're 9 or 10 years old. In their spare time, they play with knitting and um, art and drawings and all this stuff, and it's supposed to do something with the child's psyche that makes them better in the long run.
Hmm.
And so here's what I found, that some of the country's hardest charging professionals um, put their kids in these schools, and they fight over spots. The New York Times recently profiled a Waldorf school populated with the offspring of executives at Google and Apple.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's attracted notice for minimizing the use of technology in the classroom, and so they have these unusual ways of teaching that I'm not really sure. But I read one report by a lady who had put her child in one of these schools, and this was over in Great Britain, I believe. And she was really put off and just decided that there was something going on there, and maybe that school that she chose for her child wasn't exactly what she thought she was getting.
Really?
Yes. So anyway, this Steiner that I'm talking about, he was born back in 1861. So you see how far back all this stuff goes. I mean, they've been working towards this stuff for many generations.
Hmm.
And it's all tied in with the Rosicrucianism, the Jesuits, just on and on and on.
Talk to us about that for a minute, Martha, because I've heard a lot about Rosicrucians and Jesuits, but I can't say that I really know very much about them. I mean, I don't really like to disparage people simply because of their religion. Everybody's got different beliefs, and certainly since starting Crowdsource the Truth, I've been on the other end of religious discrimination, where ignorant people who dislike Jewish people or Israel like to hurl insults at me. So I don't know anything about Rosicrucianism or Jesuits. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's secret.
Huh.
I mean, I tried to find out some stuff, and I could find a reference about it being tied with the Masonic Order of Memphis, and they have some kind of Rosicrucian references in their rites. It's really hard. It combines occultism and other religious beliefs, including some Jewish mysticism and Christian Gnosticism, and it's just kind of confusing. What it is, it refers to a family of secret societies that was formed in late medieval Germany, and they taught these practices, and they were concealed from the average person. And the meetings were like, these societies that only the ones in the know could be in. At one point, someone said it was known as the College of Invisibles.
Huh.
So,
can I read you a little bit from Wikipedia, what it says?
Sure.
It says Rosicrucianism is a spiritual and cultural movement which arose in Europe in the early 17th century after the publication of several texts which purported to announce the existence of a hitherto, however you pronounce that, unknown esoteric order to the world and made seeking its knowledge attractive to many. Now, that religion that you described that Mr. Gabriel is involved in, I understand basically worships wisdom. And of course, the goddess Sophia is the goddess of wisdom. And
Right.
in the image I've prepared for today, we see a depiction of the goddess with a third eye. We've heard a lot about these kind of spiritual, beings. So there's something strange going on here. Wikipedia goes on to tell us that it combines references to Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, as I understand it, Hermeticism, alchemy, and mystical Christianity. So it's, mystical and alchemy, it seems almost like witchcraft or something.
Yes. It's very, very similar to that. And so that Douglas is all involved with this, and what he proposes in his books and stuff is the worship of the feminine goddess Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things. And then too, going back to the Jesuit thing, when he threatened you, like he was like, I don't know, I got the feeling there's a society behind him that he thinks is wanting to do you harm.
Well, he speaks about the conclave. We've heard him mention this mysterious conclave.
Right. And so then I started looking about what do the Jesuits do. And I'd sent you that chart about the Catholic Church at the top and all these other things that branch off from it. And one of the things is the Jesuits. And I found the Jesuit oath. And I don't know if anyone's ever read this, but this is really something.
Now, wait a minute. Where is that chart? I'm looking for that in the PDF.
Okay. It's at the very bottom.
I've got it here. There we go.
You see it?
Yes.
So you got the Jesuits, and then you've got underneath them the Illuminati, the Council of Foreign Relations,
wow,
international bankers, the Mafia, the Club of Rome, the Opus Dei, the Masons, and the New Age movement. See, all of this is kind of... Yeah.
Who made that? Who made that chart?
I found that on the internet. It's someone had done this to show how it's all connected.
How do they know that they're connected like this?
Well, they had done research on like Charles does with connecting the money.
Uh-huh.
And so that's where this chart came from.
Got it.
So anyway, this school stuff, it goes back into teaching these kids, and the Jesuit oath, they take a blood oath and swear that they will do anything in their power to advance the Jesuits. I mean, if you'd like, I can read it to you. It's kind of long, but it's interesting.
Let's hear it.
Okay. It says, I do further promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war secretly and openly against all heretics, Protestants and Masons, as I am directed to do, to extirpate them from the face of the whole earth. In other words, annihilate them. And that I will neither spare age, sex, nor condition, and that will hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics.
Sounds like a nice group.
Listen to this, it gets worse. Rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, crush their infants' heads against the wall in order to annihilate their exorcisable race, that when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisonous cup, strangulation cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet. Now, this was written way back, you know, years ago, so that's the funny language in here. Regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do so by any agents of the Pope or Superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Father of the Society of Jesus. In
Now, so Martha,
confirmation,
sorry to interrupt you, but people are having issue with this chart. They're saying that we don't know the source of it, and I definitely do encourage people to track this down and figure out how this was made. But of course, this Jesuit oath that you're reading, where does that come from?
it comes from the web. It's from the Protestant Reformation. It's out of the book of written in 1689 called Foxes and Firebrands.
Because, you know, a lot of people say things about Judaism that I find, you know, I go look them up and they're not necessarily true. So I want to make sure we're not disparaging a religion, but there are then people saying that you're right. So, I mean, this is the thing. We need to, so people are saying not the chart, the oath. So, all right, this chart is an item that we should look into further, but this oath is very strange. I mean, any religion that's talking about destroying other people seems maybe not so nice.
Right. And it goes more. It says, in confirmation of which I hereby dedicate my life, soul, and all corporal powers with the dagger which I now receive. I will subscribe my name written in my blood in testimony thereof, and should I prove false or weaken in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope cut off my hands and feet, and my throat from ear to ear, my belly be opened, and sulfur burned therein, with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul shall be tortured by demons in eternal hell forever.
Wow, that's not good.
That's not, I don't think I would take that oath. But back here I found another book. It's sourced from the Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris. And it says about Hitler modeled his SS army and party after the organizational structure of the Jesuits and the Roman Catholic Church. And this is a quote from Hitler. He said, I learned much from the order of the Jesuits. Until now, there has never been anything more grandiose on the earth than the hierarchical organization of the Catholic Church. I transferred much of this organization into my own party. I am going to let you in on a secret. I am founding an order in my burghs of the order. We will raise up a youth. It will make the world tremble. Hitler then stopped, saying that he couldn't say any more. Now, we know how that turned out because it was the brown shirts.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
well, we've recently heard Mr. Gabriel talking about, of course, SES quite a lot, and that they are essentially the American SS. Now, I don't know that much about SES other than what I hear on the internet or from people that we interview here. So I asked Robin Gritz. She has experience, obviously, as an FBI agent. And she says in her experience, SES is just a higher pay grade within the government. Now, of course, Field McConnell also has very bad things to say about SES. I trust both of those people, so I'm not really sure. I feel like there's more that I need to learn about SES to understand it better.
Yeah, that's my opinion too, because, you know, I trust what Robin has to say, and I trust Field.
Yeah.
And it's kind of confusing, and so I'm thinking that maybe there's some kind of thing going on there with some of the ones that are maybe bonding together to form a different SES than Robin knows about.
Well, right, because the other thing that's a very common theme in a lot of what we're dealing with here is that there are a lot of people who are engaged in very active campaigns to fool people. And when I saw Robin in Washington, D.C. over this past weekend, we had lunch after that interview, and we were talking about how, the further and further she gets away from her time there in the FBI, the more she's realizing about some of the things that were going on that she may not have realized at the time. A lot of people have taken issue with some of the things that Robin has said with regard to September 11th and a plane hitting the Pentagon. A lot of people, including myself, question that. It doesn't seem to be a commercial airliner that hit the Pentagon. So again, I think Robin and anyone who's in the military or working for the government, you're not really dedicating your life to the FBI or a service to the government without being very on board with the, the mainstream agenda of the government. I think most people who think along the lines of the things that we discuss here on Crowdsource the Truth from day to day probably wouldn't seek a career in the government. And so, you're very, as we were saying here, you get very indoctrinated into a way of thinking. And when you're brought up from a young age or an early part of your career believing something, it's very easy for that belief system to carry on. Now, when everything is shattered, as it was with Robin's career, she came to realize that Andrew McCabe was doing things that he shouldn't be doing, and that resulted in her being essentially pushed out of the FBI. So we'll keep revisiting those different ideas with Robin and see what she says.
Right. Well, going back to the Jesuits here, there's in the last 400 years, they have succeeded in establishing the largest worldwide network of schools and universities.
Wow.
And there's a list of secret societies that's being controlled by the Jesuits today: the Freemasonry, the Knights of Malta, the Bilderberg Group, the higher levels of the Knights of Columbus, and the higher levels of Opus Dei, and all the subgroups that fall under these powerful entities. So there are still men and women in this country who will tell you with grim gravity that if you trace up Masonry through all its orders till you come to the grand tip top, the head Mason of the world, you will discover that the dread individual and chief of the Society of Jesus is one and the same person. Now, you say this is very conflicting with what I know about Masonry. I just know these good old boys that are Masons and that do good works in the community, and they're church-going, religious guys, great family men and stuff. But that's the cover for the top. You understand what I'm saying? That they're using these good people and their good works to cover up what's really going on at the top. And it's the top that's rotten, not the basis.
Well, and that's very similar to what we saw in the FBI, because you see, again, I don't know that much about Masons. And when I say that, people are like, oh, shut up, you know about the Masons. I mean, I see the lodges around and I've heard the stories, but the only Mason that I've ever really dealt with personally is Pat Miletich, and he's a nice guy. I've got no issue with him. So, just like in the FBI, Robin's great. When people threaten my life, I call the FBI, and they're very professional. They take my story, they take my evidence, they interview me for hours. That's good. I don't want the FBI to go away, but I also don't want the top level, as you're saying, in the case of James Comey and Andrew McCabe, and there's a couple of other names that Robin said to me that I can't recall right now, but this sounds similar to what you're describing, a bunch of honest people who maybe don't know what's going on with the corruption at the top. Is that right?
Right. That's what it is. It's not, it's not the good people at the bottom, but it's the top people that hide from everyone else behind these things. They use these organizations just like they use a shield to
Right.
hide behind and do things.
And look, that's what an evil person would do. If you're just going to go and be brazenly evil, that sort of becomes very obvious and it's difficult to fool people. If you're someone like, oh, I don't know, Bill and Hillary Clinton, you might want to appear to be helping, starving and dying children or children with AIDS in Africa or Haiti, when in actual fact, what you're doing is just collecting millions and millions of dollars for yourself from a pharmaceutical company whose untested and ineffective drugs are being sold to a population that perhaps is being even injured by these drugs. And if you question it at all, the average person who is fooled by this thinks they're doing a great job. It's interesting how we see this pattern.
Right. And then I was looking at some of the pictures I found about the Waldorf school in D.C. Um, that one where it shows the children with the teacher, they're gathered around like in a learning circle. And at the top, there's that little circle-looking thing.
Yes, I noticed the symbology of these Waldorf schools looks very similar to things we've seen elsewhere.
Yes, like
Well, we probably don't want to
pizza.
say it. Yeah.
It looks like pizza.
Hmm.
In fact, the Washington Waldorf School holds fundraisers at Comet Ping Pong.
Oh boy, really?
And yes, I sent you in the PDF. I sent you the Waldorf School Wednesday bulletin from December the 16th, 2015, and where they're saying they'll have an alumni reception 9 p.m. at Comet Ping Pong. Yeah.
It always seems super strange to me that James Alefantis was determined by GQ magazine to be the 49th most powerful man in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the center of political power in the United States, and the United States is the center of economic, military, and political power in the world. So to be the 49th most powerful man in Washington, D.C., what the hell is he doing running a pizza restaurant?
Well, I don't think that's his last name. Um, I think his name is James Alefantis, and I can't remember if it's Rothschild or Rockefeller.
Ooh. Well, we did see a photograph of David Brock, who's pictured right here, at some party in a house with Linda Rothschild.
Right. So that's probably the one. It's probably Rothschild. I just can't remember for sure. I've seen it so many times in passing. It's just like it's understood, even though he goes by his first and middle name
Right.
and doesn't use the last name. And then the symbolism too of the Waldorf school insignia. If
The
you look,
logos,
there's like
yeah.
a 666 thing
Huh.
mingled in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's kind of similar to what Quinn had pointed out in the CERN logo. Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of that stuff going on. And but basically, this is I think it's like they're forming the minds of the children to accept this new religion. And so by the time they get through with school, there will be a whole new thing that wants to go along with all this, because to me it's all going towards this AI and the goddess Sophia, and then I was looking at how they work all this, and the American Intelligence Media platform that Douglas started with Betsy. I don't know if it's his wife or someone else going by that name, but
I'm pretty
it
sure
looks
it is
like,
his wife.
yeah, Tyler.
Right. Because when I wrote to her, I addressed her as Tyla, after seeing this Our Spirit webpage, which does show them as the Gabriels, and it's Tyla and Douglas. So I presumed that's his wife. And when I addressed her as Tyla, she responded. It says Tyla Gabriel, so I'm pretty sure that's his wife.
Okay. Well, so there you have. I mean, that's kind of funny to me. The name Tyla, and then Quinn's talking about Tyler.
Wow, boy, how did I not? Very good.
I mean, it's just kind of funny. I mean,
Yes.
But their whole deal is like to give good intel, gain trust, then start working the people over to follow them in their religion.
Well, also, American Intelligence Media, AIM, has got AI right in it. Quinn has told us about how the last video that I did with Quinn, of course, was about what he had discovered in terms of, what was the title? I want to make sure I get the right title of the video. We did a video with Quinn called The Anonymous Darknet Cult of Michael. And in that video, Quinn reviews an array of information that he discovered searching the darknet about how anonymous hackers are downloading information about how to create their own cryptocurrencies, and Quinn even referred to this artificial intelligence known as Michael, which is basically revered as a god.
Well, like the Archangel Michael?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just all, it's so many funny coincidence things all wrapped together that it finds, I don't know, it's kind of confounding the way it works. But there's even reference in the Bible, according to some of the passages I found, about wisdom, which, that's what Sophia is supposed to be. That's the Greek word for wisdom, is Sophia.
Well, what about the Hanson Robotics artificial intelligence robot, Sophia? What's up with that?
Right. Well, it's kind of unusual that she's like been made a citizen
of Saudi Arabia.
And I think that is to try and bring the Muslims into this.
Whoa.
Some kind of way. That I know they're trying to co-opt every religion in the world.
Wow.
I mean, to me, that's just it. When you start putting all these occult things into one basket, and then you start telling people that, no, you should worship Sophia because she is the one true thing in the earth, and she is all-knowing and wisdom and all this stuff. Well, everybody's going to be drawn into this because look where we are. We're on the internet. That's where it all started. And that's where a lot of minds are bent and twisted.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've met a lot of bent and twisted minds on the internet, haven't we, Martha?
Yes. And if you look at, all the gaming stuff they get kids into, and the puzzles, and, it's just so much tied together that it's just like I'm in a whirlwind here. Like, what in the world is going on?
Martha, someone on Periscope is asking a good question. They say, why did they make the Sophia robot a white woman? And I would say maybe it's because the creators, well, I've seen Dr. Hanson, he's a white man, so it could be said that he has modeled this being in his image. which is what we are told that God did with humans, right?
Right.
Could these guys have a God complex trying to create, I don't know.
Well, if you look at all the pictures and drawings of all the ancient gods, the Greek gods and all of this, that they were white, you know. Um, but I have a feeling that eventually Sophia, if she's, has much to do with the Middle East, she will eventually, her skin tone will change. She will evolve and she will become more olive complected.
Or put a burqa
Um,
onto her.
yeah,
Now, someone in our
yeah.
comments, Martha, has just brought up Michael Aquino, who, if people do not know, he was a U.S. Army general who was openly an occult religious leader who created a religion called, I believe, the Temple of Set, or something like that. And this is a rather unusual individual who he had his eyebrows sort of groomed in such a way that they look like little devil horns. And if I'm not mistaken, there was some sort of child abuse scandal on a military base in California where this individual happened to be. Do you know about that, Michael Aquino?
No,
Oh,
no,
yeah. Yeah. Interesting connection there. So, yeah, there's all these strange, unconventional religious aspects to this story.
Yeah, and then there's quotes that are found from the New Testament, speaking about the wisdom God, and then there's the reference to the goddess Sophia from, the Greek and certain pagan things. And in the Old Testament, wisdom is often celebrated and most lavishly in Proverbs 1 through 9. Wisdom is personified in female form. She is praised in exalted terms. All things you may desire cannot compare with her. That's 3:15. For she is the tree of life, 3:18. And her fruit is better than gold, 8:19. Wisdom cries out in the streets, especially encouraging the simple and scoffers to gain deeper understanding. Nevertheless, most people reject her. So, they're using, like I said, they're using everything. They're picking from the Bible and from all these different cultish religions and beliefs, and they're combining them all into one.
It's very, I don't know what to make of all this, Martha. I mean, the schools look really kind of pretty normal from the outside. We had, there's a lot of them in Hawaii. I've got the Washington Waldorf school right here. This unfortunately is not a 3D image of it, but it just looks like a pretty regular school. And we saw the Detroit Waldorf school. There was one in Hilo, Hawaii, right?
Right. Yep.
There were quite a lot. I noticed when I entered this earlier, there are a lot of Waldorf schools in Hawaii, particularly considering how remote Hawaii is. We can see right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Waldorf schools in Hawaii. What do you think of that?
Well, that's amazing. I really don't know what to think. It's just like, I started investigating this, and then all this stuff just comes popping up. Like, I had no earthly idea that any of this stuff existed, that it was so organized and
Right.
so advanced to be like under our noses and no one even take notice of it.
Well, that's the nature of a secret, isn't it?
It certainly is.
And of course, we heard about a secret society within the FBI. Peter Strzok, James Comey. Was James Comey part of the secret society? I mean, Robin spoke about them having, wait, here's the Steiner School.
Well, that's along the same lines.
Rudolf Steiner School. Interesting.
Right.
That's right here in New York City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, if you look, not just for Waldorf, that's just a spinoff. The original schools were Steiner. And so whenever they started combining this spiritual stuff together, that's when they got the Waldorf branch.
And you said this was related to the Council on Foreign Relations?
Right. Right.
So interesting. So interesting.
See, all these top people in all these different secret things, you know, they put their kids into these schools. And, you know, we were talking before about when you talk about all the child abuse and how they program the children and some of the elites, how they perpetuate this abuse and there are rings of child sex sales and body parts and all this
Well, we
stuff.
certainly don't know that any of that is going on in any of these schools that we're showing.
No, but what I'm saying is the concept is that these people perpetuate their beliefs by how they educate their children.
Right.
And so these secret society people, no matter what they're into, I have no way of knowing for sure, but they send their children to these kinds of training schools because they're in private schools. They don't go to public schools. And they're bringing them up in this thing, and they're going to be the ones who say, well, you know, like someone who's brought up Baptist or Lutheran or Jewish or Catholic, they don't know any different. This is their belief. This is their religion.
Yep. I mean, I wonder if we could interview someone from one of these schools. They certainly deserve an opportunity to share their point of view. Maybe we've got something wrong here.
Well, that would be interesting to talk to someone, you know, other than the article that I read about this lady and her bad experience with the school, because she said things like they were trying to encourage her not to have anything to do with her neighbors or anyone else except the people in the schools, and the children were not to play with any other kids except the ones in the schools.
Right.
And she said she started feeling like, well, what is wrong? You know, she just felt like really weird about it, and so she took her child out.
Now, Martha, someone's bringing up a good point here in the comments. Well, or at least it raises a question in my mind. Chumash says, didn't the Waldorf Astoria have a special train stop for Roosevelt? I do believe there was some underground transportation to the Waldorf Astoria. Does the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York have anything to do with Waldorf schools?
I have no idea. That would be something to investigate. It just sounds so, you know, it's like you hear Waldorf salad, Waldorf cookies. You know, you know what I'm saying? The name Waldorf, it's just been out there like forever.
Right.
And I don't know if that's because they chose this name because of that. Because it's just accepted name and associated with the upper crust, like the Astors and you know.
Waldorf must have been somebody very wealthy, and
Right.
Astoria.
Well, that has to do with the
area of
Astors, John Jacob Astor family. Yeah. So, so I don't know. It's just.
Someone is accusing me of stopping you from telling us about some evil. I certainly was not doing that. I just want to make sure that we aren't overstepping the bounds of asking questions and suggesting possibilities and treading into the area of accusation. If there's anything that anyone would like me to ask, we've got some time here. The comments can pose a question, and Martha and I can explore it.
Well, I didn't think you were stopping me from anything. I think you were saving me from myself. Because when I get off on this, because I've done so much research on that's my heart, the children, and to save them from suffering. And I know it's going on, and I know it's out there.
Yes.
And I've been called a tinfoil hat person and a conspiracy theorist, and
Definitely,
you know how that feels with the 9/11 thing.
Yeah.
And so you just stopped me short of going off on my little tirade.
Well, I mean, of course, child trafficking and crimes against children are horrendous, and they do go on. But as we're here on the internet, we want to be careful that we're not stating things inappropriately or hurling accusations like someone who is here in the comments using an obviously not real name and accusing me of things. So I asked that person, they're not responding with anything sensible, so now we'll ignore them. Martha, it's a really fascinating report that you've assembled. And I mean, again, you know, when you and I speak and we do these shows, sometimes you're presenting things that seem to be facts, and sometimes you're presenting things that raise questions that we don't quite know the answers to. And I enjoy that because we're sort of exploring things. Now, Be Love says, I am training Waldorf teachers. Please talk to me. Be Love.
Good.
Yes, absolutely. Send an email message to truth@crowdsourcethetruth.org, and we can communicate offline. We could do another show with Martha. We could have you on. You could share information with us. This is what we're doing. Martha, you were one of the early crowdsourcers who came to me through just watching the program on the internet, send an email, and you and I have been communicating for almost a year now. You've brought a lot of valuable information to the program. You've revealed a lot of evidence and details that, I mean, again, this is a giant puzzle that we're trying to put together, and we're not here telling people some grand truth that we know and that we are somehow the keepers of. We're searching for the truth, and we're just finding these connections that, again, we want to be careful to not accuse people of things that we don't have evidence to substantiate, like when Douglas Gabriel calls me up and tells me I should move to Ecuador if I don't want to be destroyed, and that people told him to destroy me and that I would suffer a fate worse than death. He's threatening me.
Right.
I mean, you know, cowardly threats, but that's a fact that he said those things. So we're making this broadcast to explore where that process might have come from and why he thinks it's okay to act like a jerk and call me up and make threats.
Right. And, you know, like I said, some of the things that I brought forth, I found them on the internet. They're sourced. I didn't post all the sources from the articles I got them from, but they're out there. I mean, you can take keywords and search it, and it'll bring up the articles. You don't have to have the exact name of the article. It's out there.
Right.
And what I'll do on this picture that I sent you that I found, somehow my source to it got deleted, but I'll find what it's connected to, the one that has the church and the Jesuits connected to all these other secret societies. And I'll put that on my blog page on Facebook with a source, so anyone can go there. I have my Facebook pages open to discovery, and you just search for What Big Eyes You Have, and it should bring up my blog.
Right.
And I'll find the source when we get off the air tonight and post that picture and the source.
People can communicate with you directly right here on Facebook, right, Martha? They can go to the What Big Eyes You Have blog on Facebook, and you know, people like this, I'm not going to even say who it is, but in the comments who just want to say rude things, I would recommend to anyone that wants to do that, you should email me on truth@crowdsourcethetruth.com, and you should share your phone number, and I'll call you up, and you can say whatever it is that you want to say to me. I find it particularly cowardly to be sitting here with a fake name, hurling stupid comments into the comment section. So that's a waste of time. Martha, was there anything else you wanted to go over tonight before we wrap this up?
No, I just wanted to say that I don't, people that want to help keep the truth going out there, they need to get behind you and support you. There's not anything that I'm trying to do to make money. I'm retired, and I do this to help to bring the truth out, to help people understand. And so that's my purpose in doing this. I'm not out to try to make any money off of it. And I do want you to be supportive, because you were one of the first channels that I saw that was putting the truth out there when there were so many lies on TV.
Thank
And
you
that's
for
why
saying
that's why I got behind you, Jason. And you never, tried to sway me about what I'm to say. And like I said a while ago, you stopped me to save me from myself. I think you're just an all-around great person. And I've gotten to know you as a friend over the year that we've been talking. And I don't see anything bad about you at all. You've always been honest and forthright with me.
Thank
And
you, Martha.
that's all I wanted to say.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I'm going to continue to try and educate the crowdsource community as to the process we're trying to do here. Someone named Ernie T is saying that he feels that you don't know about anything about the Waldorf education. So that's fine for Ernie to have that opinion, and we admit that we don't know that much about it. We're seeing these things that seem curious. And again, we don't want to accuse the Waldorf School of doing anything, but Ernie T, I would recommend that you email me on truth@crowdsourcethetruth.com. You can bring information to help educate myself, to help educate Martha, to help educate the rest of the crowdsource community. We'll learn something that we don't know. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say anything other than this symbol is strange. We've seen this associated with FBI investigations that came up in the internet investigation, Martha, that you referred to. Of course, everyone's heard about Comet Ping Pong and all that. We know that Douglas Gabriel is a strange guy who likes to threaten me, and he was a principal at one of these schools, and he's got one website where he basically never shows his face and puts out a lot of information that's fake. He tells people that Craig Murray is dead, and then goes on to tell people that he's never wrong, and that if he throws down the gauntlet, I have to answer. Like I'm listening to everything he says. He's got this bizarre sense of self-importance that is almost megalomaniacal, and he's a very stupid man in my estimation. So calling somebody up and threatening them, nah, that's not cool. I apologize. I called him up. But threatening anyone under any circumstance, not cool. Sometimes I do call people to alert them that what they're doing might put them into the sphere of criminal prosecution that I am seeking for the individuals that would do things like threaten me, like steal my intellectual property, like spread lies about me with specific malicious intent. I'm not the police, I'm not the FBI, but I am working with them to try to stop this from happening, because if you think we're saying something wrong here on Crowdsource the Truth, you're free to contact me, truth@crowdsource the truth, and share the correct answer, and that'll help us all. You're also free to not listen, and of course this information is always free. Everyone watching can watch for free. If you like what we're saying, if you like the crowdsource process, if you disagree with me, come give me better evidence to prove about what we don't know. But if you are watching the show daily, it's now more important than ever that you support Crowdsource the Truth, become a sponsor. You can do that on patreon.com. You can go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You can make a one-time payment on paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And the heavily doxed address here at HQ in New York City. I'll make available to anyone by email if you email truth@Crowdsource the Truth. But again, people, we want to get to the information, but obviously I need to stay alive, and to do that I need food, I need to pay for this place, and that requires financial sponsorship. The purpose of doing this rather than monetizing on YouTube through ads, I mean, we see what just happened. There are malicious, anonymous individuals using made up names on their YouTube handles, and just like we've seen them come into the comments with lots of negative sentiment, they have shown us in other venues that they have the ability to act strictly out of a sense of revenge, or to strike maliciously at the channel and take it down. So if I were simply monetizing on YouTube and these guys took out the YouTube channel like they did with the original Crowdsource the Truth channel, that would make it impossible to sustain. So it's more important than ever that you support Crowdsource the Truth and share the link to Crowdsource the Truth 2. I really want to thank the Hagman and Hagman Report for mentioning Crowdsource the Truth 2 on their broadcast today. People should definitely be watching the Hagman and Hagman Report. Doug and Joe do a great job of reporting on information that the mainstream media will not touch. And it's another reason why we want to be sponsored by our viewers. I don't want anyone to ever sponsor for an amount of money that puts them under any kind of financial burden. If we had 57,000 viewers on Crowdsource the Truth 1, if half of those viewers gave only $1 a month, this would be a very financially healthy company. So I want to thank you, Martha, for joining me tonight. Your information is always fascinating, and this was particularly fascinating in the way that it tied into things that Quinn was saying, the coincidental nature of some of the things that you brought up. And we're going to continue our investigation, our exploration into some of these coincidental matters. Martha, thank you so much for joining me. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.